February came and the Great Hydrated One once again descended upon Tyria to grant his blessing and curse, aka the balance patch, to everyone planning to spend Valentine's alone in GW2. I'll be in ranked, come and find me. Anyway, starting as usual with Elementalist. You may want to know that this egregious bullshit that was Ellie's scepter is getting some nerfs. Former ammo skills in water and air are no longer ammo skills, and most importantly, Dragon's Tooth gets its damage ratio reduced from 2.0 to 1.5. Just to put things into perspective. A homing bloody piss missile that you cannot get away from dealt more damage on its own with no modifiers than a first blow against controlled target. I don't understand how this wasn't hotfixed 3 months ago and it didn't become a nonsense in PvP until half of January. Average human needs less than a month to read patch notes, so it almost seems as if Ellie mains either ignored balance changes completely or had some difficulties reading them. I'll assume the first and move on. Main hand dagger and staff got functionality changes. Dashes in fire and earth will now stop moving when they reach a target enemy, if one exists. A perfect way for me to have another existential crisis when fighting Ellie on top of my already present existential crisis. Staff was gently lifted up with some nice buffs. Almost everything in water was buffed, with more healing or improved functionality. You can now auto-attack your teammates to heal them, and Siberia Simulator now grants Frost Aura to allies you drop it upon. By the way, that's how Russians defeated Napoleon in 1812. Furthermore, Smoking Hot Backflip got shortened cooldown and Flame Burst now blinds. Gust is now a skill shot, and Speed Boost gives you more fast per fast, so you can be fasting faster. And finally, Transmute Elf grants stability. Cooldown reduction from Soothing Disruption was built into cantrips themselves. Stone Sheath got the funny halved, and cooldown reduction from Conjure was cancelled on Twatter. Also, Tempest's Lucid Singularity is no longer clunky as Engineer's first attempt. Weaver got some damage enlargement pills to boost his PV ego, and Catalyst got hit in the balls. Jade Spheres got increased cooldowns in PvP. So did his signature elite. Also, Fortified Elf does less barrier. Overall, good changes. Though I'm unsure whether the homing AoE fuck you was nerfed enough.
Oh damn. Ow!
It's still ranged, it's still AoE, and there is still no escape. Moving on to the Engineer.
How does anyone find that funny?
Engineer gets just a few changes. Pistol was slightly slower than firearms are, and so we mixed black powder with pure cocaine, and it now shoots faster. Don't do that at home, kids. Utility goggles now remove more conditions, because classes always had an ability to put out fire and stop bleeding. That's normal, don't question it. Scrapper got cooldowns reduced on Medic Gyros and Purge Gyros toolbelt skills, and of course, Damage Dampener got removed and replaced with old trait of his that turns speed into survivability, because combination of these two is never too bullshit to face against. Also, Applied Force now applies more force per force. You're welcome. Rest of Engie's changes were bug fixes. Essentially, Mechanist as well as its mech apparently ran on shrooms and had issues with telling themselves apart from each other, and that led to all the boons and conditions being calculated wrong. Moving on to Guardian. Some power ratios were increased and some hammer skills were buffed. Zealot's Embrace now grants barrier on hit, and Banish now lets you teleport to whoever you sent on a space mission. Unscathed Contender now gives 7% more damage when you have Aegis, and another 7 where you are above 19% health, instead of 20% while you have Aegis. A nice reward for playing like a coward. Right hand strength no longer reduces your sword's cooldowns, fitting change for Lonely Valentines. Anyway, Dragon Hunter gets buffs for PvP, because it wasn't unhealthy enough for the game. Test of Faith gets longer proc duration, Fragments of Faith gets cooldown reduced, and Light's Judgment now dazes. His virtues of Resolve and Courage also get cooldown steroids, and 2 traits are turned into Eldritch Horrors. Hunter's Determination now makes any elite skill a stun break, and Heavy Light is a direct personal fuck you to everyone who didn't play Dragon Hunter, knowing the impact Stalwart Strength had on Spellbreaker builds. Making the same mistake on a class with much more degenerate CC skills is going to be another painful blow to build diversity in PvP. For a long time, Firebrand was only Guardian's PvP spec that required respectable amount of skill, and Ainit finally decided his life is stressful enough. His tomes got multiple small buffs and adjustments aimed towards making his class mechanic more fluid and intuitive to play. And on top of that, its trait weighty terms will now restore pages on final cast of his mantras, which were by the way reverted to pre-rework state of requiring preparation to gain multiple casts of a skill that only went on cooldown if you spend all the charges. And also, Greatsword's Whirling Wrath no longer slows the Guardian who uses it, because kiting a fragging blender with a permanent stability, swiftness and aegis, not to mention a billion freaking gap clauses, isn't difficult enough. Next in line is Mesmer. Master of Manipulation trait now grants aegis instead of super speed and doesn't affect cooldowns. All manipulations have reduced baseline cooldowns, and mantras are, just as in Guardian's case, reverted to pre-rework state. They are also granting some stuff on preparation, by the way. Some minor damage buffs were applied, and protected phantasms were replaced with temporal enchanter, granting super speed and resistance in area of glamours, as well as increasing their duration. Chronomancer's Echo of Memory now summons its designated phantasms as soon as you block an attack, and interaction between returning wave of Tides of Time and Continuum Shift is no longer retarded. Well of Action grants some offensive boons on final pulse, and Well of Senility? Jesus Christ. Dices on initial pulse. Finally, Virtuosus Psychic Riposte now functions properly, and now your entire shatter should be unblockable instead of just the first instance of it. Onto the big spooky. Necromancer gets cooldown reduction from Banshee's Veil built into Warhorn skills, and some fancy buffs to Dagger's damage and life force generation. Dark Pact also removes 3 boons instead of corrupting 1. Reaper's Shout cooldown reduction from Augury of Death is built into shouts themselves, and all the shouts are stronger against the target that stand directly next to you, just like in real life. Chilling Victory got its cooldown halved, and Blighter's boon activates on Necro doing Necro things, so you can sustain with it more efficiently. Next in line, Ranger. Ranger got Empathic Bond changed from suffering silently together to now letting your therapy dog actually do the therapy on you. Ragged Growth now heals more, because protection wasn't useful enough, and Windborne Notes got its cooldown reduction built into Warhorn skills. Wilderness Knowledge and Brutish Seals got the same treatment, but with their correlated survival skills and signets instead. Soul Beast got half a reason to dagger mainhand and incentive to use few of his stances. Primal Cry and Eternal Bond were also improved, getting respectively a poison application and more healing. That of course won't make a difference, because everyone with more than one brain cell already moved to playing Untamed, and those who left are lost cause. Finally, Unnatural Traversal can no longer be casted mid-animation. Great change! Now do that to Guardian! Revenant's Resilient Spirit got gently tapped and now grants 41 less barrier per boon on you. Renegade skills, Bloodbane Path and 7-shot got slight damage buffs. Kala's Favor gives 1% more damage per stack, Endless Enmity now grants Fury regardless of target's HP, and Brutal Momentum gives you 1/3 of its crit chance bonus instead of nothing when your endurance is not full. Vindicator gets some damage nerfs to his most oppressive damage skills, and Imperial Impact no longer chills. Thief got his cooldown reduction from Signets of Power baked into the signets themselves, and now this trait restores initiative on signets use. Trickster's cooldown reduction was baked into Tricks and now removes 2 conditions instead of 1. Skellig Venom got its cooldown reduced, and Keen Observer now grants its benefits at 75% HP, down from 90%. Daredevil's Steel skill is no longer unblockable, and in return it doesn't have reduced range. Impairing Daggers and Impact Strike have reduced cooldowns. Deadeye no longer loses Malice when knocked down state, Got multiple rifle damage buffs for PvE, and Shadow Meld no longer removes Reveal. Spectre got Might Generation and Protection uptime on Shadow Sap, Well of Silence nowadays is once instead of 5 times and removes conditions. Well of Bounty grants more might. And last but not least, Warrior changes. Counterblow got its cooldown reduced, and Pommel Bash now grants barrier on cheeky interrupt attempts. Savage Leap has higher power ratio, and Final Thrust applies half of its bleeding on targets above 50% health. Doilak Signet heals more, stabilizes less, and has shorter cooldown. Balance Stanced, Frenzy, and Signet of Stamina also have shorter cooldowns, with that last one also giving double the endurance it used to give. Banner of Defense and Fierce Blow have increased cooldowns, Adrenal Health heals less, and Martial Cadence gives you less quickness. Berserker's Arc Divider damage is increased in PvE, Shattering Blow, Sundering Leap, and Outrage gets reduced cooldowns in PvP, Dead or Alive lasts longer. Eternal Champion now makes some traits that activate on entering rage also activate on exiting rage, not to mention you appear to be able to leave rage whenever you choose, and Spellbreaker got gently harassed with a baseball bat on Zen Knuckles. It is not a big nerf though, just a removal of egregious bullshit that should get straightened years ago. And now full counter only grants you benefit of hitting it when you actually hit it, and Breaching Strike no longer deals 50% more damage against players with no boons. Blade Sworn's Gunsaber is now primarily ranged, so he'll have at least one defining feature that isn't done by Spellbreaker Beta. And now you can play Gunsworn as fully ranged Sworn. Artillery Slash now has less ammo, but dumps it all at once, and it's stronger the more ammo you dump into the target. And now Cyclone Trigger is less clunky and gives ages. Overall, good changes across the board. I'm excited for Staff Ellie. I'm glad there will be no Unblockable Steel in the game. However, Vision of Unblockable Fear, Slowly but surely underpowered specs are becoming crazier, and I'm all down for that. There is no problem with specs being insanely powerful as long as everything is roughly equally powerful. However, CC is a little bit of an exemption to this. When playing a game is fun, then being forced to not play the game for the entire duration of fight because someone else has more hard CC than you have stone breaks is awful. If we increase an incentive to play CC heavy builds by making CC more reliable and by introducing more traits rewarding you for landing a CC, we will also increase an incentive to bring more stability for people without easy access to CC. And that way we land in an environment where CCs just don't work because everyone has stability, so CC enjoyers don't get to have fun, while still making stab mandatory, so classes with poor access to it don't get to have fun either, and because CC countermeasures take up space for other important tools and utilities, even people with broad access to stability won't get to have fun. Overbuffing CC and CC related traits is the only scenario in Guild Wars 2 where literally everyone loses. So let's not do that. I know that after Scepter Ellie redefined Cancer, it will be really hard to top that, but that doesn't necessarily mean we should keep trying. With that said, Crabface out.